Hello, everyone, and welcome to a small screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Mush. I am not joined by anybody this week because no one else had a chance to watch the most recent episode of Star Wars Clone Wars, which, by the way, I've got going in the background right now. So we are live on basically everything: um, Periscope, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. If you want to watch us live, you can follow us basically on Twitter at Tower Babblecast to watch us live. Today we're going to be covering Season 7, the final season of Clone Wars. Season 7, Episode 1, which is the Bad Batch. Now, there's lots to cover, and I'm going to try to touch on as much of it as I can. But before, again, we get to that, I'll just remind everyone to, again, if you want to help support the show, patreon.com/Tower Babblecast is the place to do it. $5 a month will get you access to our movie club, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So check that out. It makes a huge difference for the show. It allows us to do this whole live video stuff that we've never done before. So, and if you're just listening to the audio, again, that's where we started. That's obviously, of course, we always try to keep that a real live thing that we're going to keep doing forever. So please don't think you have to watch the video. But if you want to see what we look like, or you want to see what our cool new set looks like, which is really not as cool as I like to think it is. It's not up to snuff yet. But if you want to check it out, you can follow us on our live videos, which will be are also stored. You can watch them later on Facebook, YouTube, all that fun stuff. TowerBabble.ca is where we do everything. So let's dive into this episode. I guess where do we start? I guess we start with the fact that Clone Wars is back at all. Clone Wars being probably some of my absolute favorite Star Wars of any kind, right? Born of Lucas himself, kind of passed on to Dave Filoni, who kind of carried the torch of what George Lucas kind of is his vision of Star Wars is. Obviously, we didn't get that in the sequel trilogy with 7, 8, and 9, but we still have a really amazing way of looking back and kind of connecting with that original vision. And I've always appreciated, I think some of the things I've always appreciated about Clone Wars is its ability to kind of tackle more serious issues that the prequels didn't have time to handle. I mean, the realities of war are pretty heavy, or at least they can be. And that's obviously just nothing that the movies were interested in talking about. But the show has time to do that. I think the clones as characters are extremely fascinating. You know, I had somebody tweet the other day, or I read it on Twitter. Basically, this idea that these clones are essentially slaves bred to believe they're not slaves. And I don't want to get into that whole side of things, but I mean, just the idea of that alone is pretty interesting of a topic. So I love the clones as characters. I love Rex, who I was so happy to see that was able to join the cast in Rebels. I like even the other clones that we didn't get to see as much of, like Cody. This idea of the soldier who always follows orders, is less free thinking as Rex, and ultimately we know how that turns out, right? With him carrying out Order 66 against Obi-Wan, which is really kind of sad. So, which actually brings me back to this season. We have an understanding that this season's kind of arc, based on the trailers, is going to take us through events of Revenge of the Sith. And it's going to show us Order 66 again, for those who, no spoilers for those who have played some of the more recent Star Wars games, or who have gone back and watched some of the older Star Wars movies now. Order 66 is still really hard. I think it's, by the way, one of the coolest moments in the series, this idea of these soldiers, these comrades who are programmed basically to turn on the people that they who trusted them the most. And it's pretty tragic, and it hurts every time we have to see it. And I've seen it now a couple times recently, and I'm actually very excited to see what this look at it's going to be, because I think it's going to be a bit more in depth. I know we saw in season 6 where there's the whole story arc dealing with I think it's Fives discovering the chip implanted in the clones' heads that allows for Order 66 to happen, and people thinking he's crazy. There's a whole it's one of the show's best arcs, and I would highly recommend going back and watching it. Now, that brings us to, I guess, this most recent episode, which is dealing most or basically exclusively with the clones. So just to recap what this first episode of season 7 is all about. It's about it reunites Cody and Rex, which I think is always fun because they're the two clones that I think that people are most familiar with. They're the distinct looking. I mean, maybe people aren't as familiar with some of the other clones from Clone Wars, like EKKO, who, by the way, it plays a key role in this episode, surprisingly. So we'll get to that. Also, we have the Fives. You gotta love Fives. Any of these ARC troopers basically, and it's just nice to see Cody and Rex together. So I'm a big fan of that. So it reunites them on a mission on Anaxis. Let me just read from the episode description. Rex and Cody, and Clone Force 99, an unorthodox elite squad, also known as the Bad Batch, look to recover Republic strategy algorithm from Admiral Trench, but a haunting truth awaits. So, the Disney Plus description: Captain Rex and the Bad Batch must infiltrate an enemy base on Anaxis. I'm a little upset that they didn't include Cody in there, just Captain Rex. I mean, Cody plays a pretty key role in this. That's neither here nor there. So another kind of small side bit, which I think is really cool. And by the way, hello to everyone who's in the chat today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Always a big fan of interacting with people on the chat, so I appreciate that. But the cool thing about Anaxis is, and this base on Anaxis is actually, it's a version of the base that was done on, it was on Rebels 4, and I have this information in front of me as well. Season 1, Episode 7, Out of Darkness. Now, people might remember that episode because that is the episode where Ezra kind of communicates with this like giant creature that's basically haunting them on this asteroid base, a former Republic asteroid base that they reused. They reused the assets for this Anaxis base, which I think is really cool. But then there's these Fernox. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Anyway, Ezra communicates with one, and they helps them to escape. You might notice, and those who are have an eagle eye for this kind of stuff, in this episode, the Bad Batch episode, there's actually some what looks like those Fernox in the background with their glowing eyes when they're stopped at camp at night, which is pretty cool. I think that might just, I don't know if that's going to lead to anything at all, but it might just be kind of like a callback to that Rebels episode, which is, I think, also pretty neat as a kind of a callback. So what else we got going? So the actual episode itself deals with, I think in a kind of clunky way, or at least at the beginning, has this clunky introduction to with Rex and Cody having this conversation about EKKO, and basically saying, I have this funky feeling that these command. I guess the idea is that they're trying to track down this algorithm because their strategies keep getting worse and worse than whether they're used. And they're like, well, I feel like these strategies are the ones that I came up with EKKO a long time ago, so I really have this weird feeling. It's not the best, I feel like, handling of it. The dialogue there is, or at least the writing is not great. Of course, the acting is great for all the clones, as always. But I didn't love that. So anyway, they introduced the idea of, hey, EKKO might still be alive, or there's something to do with EKKO. So I went back and watched just recently, just 5 minutes ago, and that's what's on the background here, is the episodes from previous season, which I have the information on that as well. Season 3, episodes 18 through 20, so the Citadel Counterattack and Citadel Rescue. You might remember those episodes for featuring Tarkin, a young Tarkin, which I thought was also interesting, but also has Rex and Cody there. And in the Citadel episode, I think Counterattack, in part of that arc, the middle episode, is when EKKO is thought to be killed, right? This has not been touched on since then. So I think basically their handling of this feels a little amateurish. It's just like, oh, hey, don't you remember this guy? Well, no one remembers EKKO because we haven't talked about him really in a serious way since that season 3 episode. So anyway, that's that season. What we have on the background here, really great arc. It's a lot of fun. It's about infiltrating a prison that was designed to hold Jedi and trying to escape. There's some pretty brutal deaths to some clones. One gets, shot right in the head, point blank range, which is pretty brutal. One gets cut in half. They don't show it, but it's implied. There's some pretty brutal lightsaber to like giant wolf type creature kind of damage. Surprising for this type of show. Also calling back to, I guess, what I didn't realize at the time was Dave Filoni's obsession with wolves. So there's like these tracking wolves that they have in the final episode of that arc. And they're dispatched pretty brutally. One goes flying into lava, stabbed by lightsabers, stuff like that. It's pretty gruesome. So again, just calling back to the idea that this show is way darker than most people give it credit for, I think. So back to this Bad Batch episode, we are then introduced to this idea like, hey, you know what we're going to do is we're going to infiltrate this outpost that contain, or this information center, data center that contains this algorithm. By the way, I love the use of algorithms in Star Wars. I'm much more of a fan when they don't really reveal this type of like how that's done. It's like, oh, it's math. Okay, cool, I guess. Anyway, they have to go. They're going to infiltrate this data center, and it needs behind the enemy lines type infiltration. So Cody's idea is that, well, we'll use Clone Force 99. And Rex is like, well, I've never heard of these guys. And then like basically they are a group of clones with desirable, quote unquote, desirable mutations. So they I think they're kind of cheesy. It's a group that has like a really strong guy, has like a really nerdy guy, a sharpshooter, a guy who can track. It's pretty cool. So it's Sergeant Hunter, Wrecker, the squad's brash strongman and assault specialist, Crosshair, the team's grim, sarcastic sniper, and Tech, the hyper intelligent and knowledgeable tech specialist. And they're pretty stereotypical. I think Sergeant Hunter is the coolest. He's kind of just like Rambo. Has the ability. This is unbelievably cheesy, but I think they say in the episode that he has the ability to. By the way, there was another brutal clone death. One that falls to his death and then lands on a mine halfway down a sheer cliff. So, a lot of brutal clone deaths in that season 3 arc. Anyway, what was I talking about? This idea that this tracker clone, Sergeant Hunter, can like feel electronic pulses through the planet. It's really dumb. I'll put it that way. And like I always appreciate their ability to kind of give these clones different kind of personalities, even though they are clones, right? But I think the way that they kind of do this with Hunter's kind of like he follows orders, but he likes to do things their own way. Wrecker, who I don't love this idea of just making him kind of like dumb but strong. It's just such a cliche, but that's the case. Can lift apparently a whole gunship, or at least flip one. And Crosshair doesn't really say much, but I think any kind of cool sniper. It reminds me of the sniper from Saving Private Ryan, if you're familiar with that movie. And then Tech, I mean, again, talk about a cliche. He's got like big round, like almost like big bottle glasses, Coke bottle glasses. Kind of stupid, at least from a character design standpoint. And they do look different from most clones, which I think is pretty cool. Again, they are mutated, so I think that's interesting. So they're off on this mission behind enemy lines. They get shot down. A part of what I like about an Axis as a setting is that everything's kind of made of glass, or at least how we have the salt planet crate from episode 8. Well, an Axis is like a glass planet, I guess. the trees, everything's made out of some sort of like breakable, crystal-y type material. It looks cool on screen, so I'll give them that at least. And they get shot down behind enemy lines, and then there's this whole sequence where the Bad Batch. And by the way, just I guess I can pause here. Anyways, the Bad Batch. I'll finish this and then we'll pause. The Bad Batch does this whole sequence where they like lift up the shield, the door, the shielded door section of this gunship, of the Republic gunship, and they carry it forward towards this approaching whole battalion of droids, and does this cool thing where Tech gives them like a distance for throwing grenades, and then they throw grenades, and then the sniper shoots them, and then it does really cool kind of show off how talented they can be as specialists. So they're off doing that. But one of the cool things about this episode is that actually a lot of this, if you were lucky enough to have gone to Star Wars Celebration and Anaheim in 2015, so 5 years ago, you would have gotten a taste of what these episodes were. They basically got animatics, which is this kind of like low res, not the animation's not completed. It's basically designed to just to kind of help plot out the episode of this Bad Batch of this episode, which they were really excited about. The creators, Dave Filoni, huge fans of this arc. So it was actually released on StarWars.com on April 29th, not much longer, about a week and a bit longer after it was shown in a private screening on the 17th in 2015. So some of this stuff has actually already been seen online. I would be interested to see how much has changed. I haven't gone back and looked yet, but I imagine some of that has changed. And so when it was revealed that the Bad Batch would be a part of this the final season of Clone Wars, I think people were pretty excited to kind of see the final version of what we would get here. So another part of what of this episode that I like is that Admiral Trench is here. Admiral Trench being that basically tarantula, giant human size. Terrifying. Imagine seeing that in real life. It would be absolutely terrifying. Or even not in animation, like just some sort of version of that in one of the movies. It's just the concept alone just gives me the shivvies. So this tarantula type general is basically the best general that the Separatists have, and I'm a big fan of all the episodes with him in it, just because tactically holds his own against the Jedi, and basically whenever the Jedi aren't being just completely steamrolling through everything, as fun as that is, it's a bit more exciting, I think, overall. So anyway, Admiral Trench, he's the one who's overseeing the other side of the battle from the Separatist standpoint, and so I like that. Anyway, so back to the mission. They get pinned down. They have to move. I think Cody gets injured, I believe, so he's kind of sidelined, which I don't love. They have to then make a decision to carry on or look for extraction. This is, by the way, the night scene where they have these glowing eyes in the background of those fire things or whatever they're called. They decide that they're going to push forward to this data center. They attack a outpost as a distraction. They then infiltrate this data center and come across. They basically hack it, or as it's called in Star Wars, slice. This just transmission, which is coming from Offworld, and apparently, there's some sort of transmission that is coming from a real person or something, and it's. I don't love it because it's this idea like, well, I don't understand. So they're asking like, how does this work? I guess we'll find out. CT-1409 is EKKO's identification number, and that's what's being broadcast over and over and over again. But why would that be broadcast over and over and over again? That's not a code for anything. It's just his name, essentially. So anyway, Rex has this big thing. He's like, it can't be. And so we find out that EKKO's alive. He didn't die at the Citadel. He was captured. He's probably been at that prison, which is a brutal prison to be at. And it was likely broken and is being used to identify battle tactics of the Republic. So I think it's really cool and apparently it's off-world. I'm trying to find what the name of the planet is. Kokoka Minor. Oh yeah, okay. SSSW, another planet from SSSW Minor. Digging further, Tech manages to receive an audio signal which sounds like a human voice. Rex assists him to send a transmission requesting a person's identity, and the voice okay, that makes more sense. And the voice responds CT1409 over and over again. And you're like, what? And EKKO, again, people really like or really attached to these clones, EKKO 5s, the ones from that early season, or it's season 1 or season 2 arc, Rookies, I believe it's called. It's pretty cool. This idea that we can kind of weave these more intricate stories together, and that the fact that Clone Wars is back at all, obviously awesome. But we're able to tell these more intricate stories, I think is pretty interesting. So, long story short, I think this episode is okay at best. From a character perspective, I think the Bad Batch themselves are pretty thin, and pretty one note and ultimately kind of cliche. Based on some cool kind of existing characters that we might have seen in other pop culture media. So I guess that's cool if you're into that. I guess I can't deny, like their armor is really cool. It's got this black and gray and red kind of design, and I'm a big fan for cool clone armor. So I'll give them props for that. And ultimately, I guess, like, it's hard to complain about seeing Rambo, Star Wars Rambo. It's a kind of a nitpick, I guess, but I like to see a little bit more depth, and ultimately, this idea that we don't work with reggies or whatever they call them, normies, and it just feels very cliche to me. I also didn't really like the dialogue between Rex and Cody. It felt very clunky, but the action's really good. I'll give them that. Ultimately, it gives me some kind of warm fuzzies to see Clone Wars back at all. So I kind of not really kind of seeing this entirely from an entirely subjective or objective point of view. So I'll just make that clear. But I'm a big Star Wars fan. I don't think anyone's listening to this stuff if you don't expect someone who likes Star Wars to be talking about Star Wars. What's the point? So basically, that's the gist of it. What does this imply? I guess this idea, like, what's next? We're going to have to hunt. We're going to have to go to SSSW Minor. We're going to have to go rescue EKKO, who's going to be broken. How this might apply to Order 66, if at all, will be interesting. It might not, and likely won't. That's really where I'm starting. Like, ultimately, yeah, it's cool to see this finished version of the Bad Batch, but I really want to see them start diving into kind of this, what Order 66 means to the clones, this idea of portraying their generals, and knowing if that's going to happen, what does that mean, or how do they handle that, which we only really got to scrape the surface of in the previous season. I'm really excited for that, and really what I want to see most of this season. So you can look for reviews of these Clone Wars episodes from me. I hope to get Dan on, maybe Jeremy on some of these episodes as well, to kind of break them all down a little bit more, get what their take is. There's who are a little bit more cynical about Star Wars than I am, so it'll be interesting to see what they think. And I guess Sundays seem like a good day. We generally record our regular Tower Babble podcast on Saturdays during the day. Sunday nights, I don't normally have a lot to do. There's no Game of Thrones anymore, right? We're in a post Game of Thrones world. There's no Westworld right now. There's nothing on Sunday nights that's giving me that I need to be or do or broadcast for. So Sunday nights, I think, seems reasonable. I know that they come out on, I think it's Fridays or Thursdays. Either way, you can look for initial reactions from me on Twitter at Tower Babblecast on Twitter, to kind of see what I think of them, and then after that, look for the live broadcast Sunday, and then reviews dropping on either Monday or Tuesday on the feed. So if you're not following or subscribed to Small Screen Star Wars, make sure to do that on your iTunes, Google, whatever you have. Just type in Small Screen Star Wars. You'll find it. It's a Tower Babble podcast. We're really proud of everything we do here, which you can find all that at towerbabblepodcast.ca. So again, thanks everyone for watching live today. We do this live every time we record anything, which I think is important in this modern future that we live in. If you want to tune into those, you can definitely do that on YouTube, Twitch. We got a little bit of feedback on Twitch today, which I was really excited about. So thanks to everyone who tuned in to take a look at what we're doing here on Twitch. But again, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, facebook.com/Tower Babblecast is where you can find our page. Love to see you there. Love to hear your feedback, what you think of the show. What do you think of this most recent episode? Go back and watch these Citadel episodes, see what you think of those. I think it might give you some inkling into what's coming next. I would Tarkin might come back. That would be interesting. We haven't seen Tarkin since that Citadel episode. I would be surprised. I don't really see any reason. I think in the timeline of Star Wars right now, Tarkin's busy overseeing not necessarily the Death Star, but he's kind of he might be aware of that project being in development. We know that the plans are seen in Revenge of the Sith. We're right around that same timeline, so he might be involved in knowing what those plans are. I know he's technically a part of the Republic, but because he's such a right-hand man to the Chancellor and ultimately the Emperor, he might have a little bit more insight into that kind of stuff. So maybe that's a possibility. And obviously it'll be fun to see some more Mace Windu and some more Jedi, kicking butt. This is the peak of the Jedi, and right before they collapse, which is pretty sad, but it'll be fun to see anyway. So I look forward to breaking all those down with you. And we will be back again, I guess next week, and we'll talk to you then.